This is the Advertising Blueprint with Ryan Pankow.
All right, everyone, welcome back. This is Ryan Pankow with the Advertising Blueprint podcast. This is a podcast meant for small business owners trying to grow their business with advertising strategies. So this week is going over tracking results. This is the most important aspect of any business when they advertise. It's all about the ROI, return on investment. If I spend this much money in advertising, do I get this much money back? So this is one of the most crucial points in advertising. So hopefully I can help out businesses figure out the best way to figure out their tracking. Some businesses have it easier than other businesses, but we can all figure out something. So first thing I want to go over is I want to talk about a story first this week. I know usually we've been doing these stories at the end, but this week I just want to do something different. So I'm going to tell you about a client, the first year or two that I started my advertising agency. After the second month, they called me up and they said, Ryan, this advertising is not working. I'm going to have to let you go. And I was shocked. I couldn't believe it. This was a pretty big client, and I did not understand why everyone else was doing so well and he was doing so poorly. So after that phone call, I called all of his numbers, and I could see that in that second month, he got over 200 phone calls. So I call him back up and I say, how many sales did you have last month? He said, well, I only had 5 sales. And I said, did you know you've had 200 phone calls? And that client was blown away. What do you mean I had 200 phone calls? How did I only have 5 sales, 200 phone calls? So then we started to listen to the phone calls, and we noticed that our front desk, they kept telling everyone that called in, yep, we'll mail you some information. Yep, we'll mail you some information. Yep, we'll mail you some information. What are you doing? You don't mail information. Get them in the door. If they get out the door, you'll close them. So if it was not for our tracking with the phone systems, we would have never known. I would have been fired. He would have hired someone else. The same thing would have happened. His business would have gone under. That's how important tracking is. So, wanted to tell you that quick story before we jumped into it. So, first thing I want to talk to you about is phone tracking. Phone tracking is for any business where you have to make a phone call first before anything happens. So that could be a dentist, that could be a doctor, that could be anyone who does anything in home improvement. You call first to get a bid. Anything that requires that phone call first, that has to be something that 100% of businesses should do. Now, what happens is there's a bunch of different services, a bunch of different websites that you can go to. Some of them are as little as $50 a month. You can get 3, 4, 5, 6, how many ever phantom numbers you want. And these phantom numbers are all different, but when you call them, they all ring to your front desk. So for your front desk, they all get those phone calls, and they have no idea if it's from here, from there, from there. They just know that they're getting this phone call. Now, when you put these phantom numbers, one might go on the newspaper, one might go on a mailer, one might go on a TV ad, one might go on an online ad. You should even put one on your website. But then each month you can see, okay, this got this many phone calls, this got this many phone calls, this got this many phone calls. Once you see all those phone calls rolling in, you can then say, this is how much I spent on it, and then even break things down to a cost per call. Now you can really see what has the best ROI, what's bringing you the best bang for your buck. Any business where a phone call happens first, you have to use phantom numbers, okay? Now, I do want to point out one thing before we move on. As we talked about earlier in another podcast, for radio, if you're doing any radio advertising, do not put a phone number on it. You're using your hands typically when you're listening to the radio. You can't write something down real quick. So put that phone tracking number on your website, and when you run radio, if you see a spike, you know it helps. If you don't see any spike, maybe radio didn't work that well. But that's a good way that you can track radio advertising with phone tracking. So, next thing I want to talk about is people who are selling things online. So for those businesses, they have it the easiest. The one biggest thing about anything online advertising is they have the best tracking system for it. So they know exactly who's buying, where they're located at, what time they bought. They can really, really narrow things down so you can easily tell how well things are working and when you're doing things that way. Even when you actually advertise online, you can see how many people clicked on the ad. You can see if it went up or down. You can see which ads did better. Online advertising is the easiest form to track of all the advertising. So that's really nice for them. Something else I do want to have everyone keep in mind though too, it's with digital advertising, unless it's sales, but if it's just clicks and it's how many people saw your ad, we typically like to cut it in half because we feel like over half of the online traffic are bots. So that's just something, a rule of thumb, just something to keep in mind for everybody. Now, the hardest one to go over is the walk-in business. Those are the people who are selling hamburgers. Those are the people who are a movie theater, someone that you walk in and you see, there is no phone call. Maybe it's a store that sells clothes. You can't tell how well something is working by phone tracking or by doing something online. So what you have to do is, what we recommend those people to do is first cut down on your advertising. Find that base where you feel the most confident. Of the 4 things that we are advertising with, this is what we feel the most confident with, and this is what we think works the best. Then we do that for 6 months. That's our base. So we can tell, okay, so this is our normal, this is what we should see month in, month out. We can see exactly and what is happening. Then once we have that base, then we can slowly add things on and see if sales go up or down. So let's say if for 6 months we have our base, but then for 3 months we say, hey, you know what, I'm going to try some radio. Well, then we can try radio for those 3 months, maybe even those 6 months. And you see, did sales go up? Did they stay flat? And if they did go up, was it enough to pay off the cost of this advertising? So then you can see. Now, if you try that, that's your missing variable. And then in that missing variable, if it does well, you then add it onto the base and you make it a part of your base buy. Then you get that going, you try something new. Every time you try something new, if it doesn't work, don't do it anymore. If it does, add to your base until you are at the budget that you want to be on. So that's typically the best way we found for that walk-in business. It just comes down to sales, but they do have it the hardest of everyone. So, all right, well, that is the podcast mini-series. This is going to be the last solo podcast. Hopefully it wasn't an absolute train wreck. What we're going to do is we're going to have on a few guests over the next few weeks. And none of these guests are going to be famous. You're not going to tune in so you can hear Elon Musk talk about something amazing. But they are going to be all actual, true business owners. They're going to be people who've tried different things in their advertising life, things that have worked, things that have failed. It's not going to be me going over all these little things, but it's going to be going over what they've seen work and what things that they've liked doing and maybe even mistakes that they've made. So it's going to be a lot more fun, a lot less me talking at you. I'm really excited to actually have some guests, so tune in for that. Again, this is Ryan Hancock with the Advertising Blueprint. Hope to see you soon.